This is the Datagrid project creator. What this does is allow you to build bots which use the Datagrid extremely quickly. This is going to write most of the back-end code for you and allow you to focus on the things that matter, like getting the actual data. This uses a visual builder so that you can see how your data grid is going to look. It also allows you to create dynamic data grids. And what I mean by that is data grids in which people will have the option to get that piece of data for that column or not. So for example, if you wanted to create a program which gets social signals such as Twitter, Facebook, and Google+, but you wanted to give your users the option to not choose all of those or choose them all if they want, this will do that for you. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute, because we're actually going to build that exact same script that I was just talking about, that social signals checker, and you can see just how quickly we can build it. But I'm going to talk about the features of the program first. So we have the project settings. This is where you can customize the projects. You're going to be able to customize the different variables and names of things that you will need to interact with when you're building out the rest of your project. For example, the list name. Now, pretty much all data grids, they're going to have a piece of key information, generally in a list, such as a URL. In the case of the social signals checker, it's going to take that URL from a list of URLs, and it's going to be checking each URL for the various social signals, right? So we're going to need that. We're going to need the row variable name. What that means is it is the row that we're going to be incrementing inside of the table, and that's a piece of information that you may need to interact with if you want to, say, multi-thread this. The table name, where all the data is stored, you may need to know that, and so you can change all of these. And then the command name. This is going to be the main command when the project is running. You also have the ability to add export code automatically. And so when you tick this, it will create the code needed to have an export button, for example, and when you click that, it will automatically use the file management plugin to create a custom save file for a CSV so that you can export the data grid. It does that automatically because that code is pretty much going to always be the same throughout all projects, so it will build that into it as well if you check that. You can create new projects, so if I click this, it's going to clear everything out. In fact, I should load a project first, so I'm going to load this social project. Okay, this is basically the project that we want to create, and if I wanted to save that, of course I can hit save and save it as something else. That's pretty self-explanatory. When I hit new, as you can see, the data grid went away and everything kind of clears out. I'm going to load that back up because it's a good example here. So we want to loop for the list name of URLs because that's what we're going to be using as the main input here. But something I noticed right away is I seem to have forgot to actually add the column URLs into the data grid. So let's add that in. We want the column to be named URLs, and we want to actually add that in before everything else, because if I put it on the default setting and I add it, it's just going to add it onto the end. That's what the default setting does. It's just going to keep adding things onto the end. Well, we don't really want the URLs to be last because that doesn't make sense. Instead, we probably want to be first. So I'm actually going to remove that. And we're going to set the column index in this case to be 0 because that'll be the first one. And see, I added it in there, no problem. I'm actually going to recreate this project real quick because I want to show you how easy it is to build this from scratch. So let's just create a new project. We're going to name the list name URLs because that's what we're going to be using as the input. I'm just going to call this row number. Table name, let's call it social because we're getting social signals. And for the command name, I'm just going to call it main loop, just like a generic name. I want to add export code to my project. So let's add the URLs first for the first column. And I'm going to add this in as a default because there's no columns, so there's nowhere else to add in at the moment. This checkbox, I'll talk about in a second. But first, let's click add. Now let's add the second one. I want to add in Twitter. And I want to add it into the end again because the URLs is always going to be the first one. This time, I'm going to use this checkbox. What this does is it enables the dynamic part of this whole program, right? So this is going to make Twitter an option. It's going to create a bit of code here so that it becomes a checkbox. And when the user checks that checkbox, it will get Twitter in the data grid. It'll add that into the data grid. And if they don't check that checkbox, it will not get that information and it won't show it in the data grid either. So let's name the checkbox label Twitter. And for the variable name, I'm also going to call it Twitter with a lowercase t. And I'm going to add a few more real quick. Let's do Google+. Let's add that in as the label as well. For the variable name, I'm just going to put G+. And now I want to add in Facebook, but I've decided that I don't want Facebook at the end. Let's say maybe I came back later and wanted to add Facebook in as an option. That's no problem. I could have just saved the project maybe and loaded it. And I can now come back in and I want to add it in before Google+. So I'm just going to put it in as the one there. Hit add. And you know what? I actually put it in the wrong spot. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to remove it. No problem. And I'm actually going to put it in as the 2. There we go. Okay. So once everything's filled in here and you're satisfied, all you do is hit the create code button. What this is going to do is it's going to create most of the code needed for your entire project. So that only really took like a couple minutes. And once you get faster at this and stuff, I mean, you can do that in a minute. That's no problem. And you can see all the code it's going to create for you. Now, one thing I want to talk about real quick is the Activate File Management plugin. It's going to tell you that because you chose the export code. If I untick that, it's going to not say that, but we actually want that. And so what it's going to do is it's going to let you know that you just need to go in to your program there and activate it. I believe I have it activated already, and I do because those are part of it. So that's just gonna pop up in the future when more functions and things are added in, like proxies and multi-threading and stuff. It'll be telling you to activate more things as well. For now, let's just go ahead and choose the UBot GUI code. So all I do is click copy, come over to my project. I'm going to click on the code view. I'm going to paste that in. Just going to hit enter. I'm now going to copy the main code, so we'll just click that button. We're going to paste that in. And you can see that it's going to create a whole bunch of code for you. Not only that, but it's going to be customized as well. So your table where the information is stored, for example, we named that social because we're getting social signals. And so all the information is going to be stored in the social table. We wanted a loop for the URLs list, so it's going to name it that. Now, I've already created the code to get Twitter, Facebook, and Google. So far, the bots created this much code for me, which is quite a bit, and I've created this much code, not very much at all, as you can see. And so I'm going to connect them together right now and show you how that works. So one thing I'm going to change here is, well, one thing I should talk about is the command. This is going to have some comments in it, and it's going to tell you where to put the little bits of code you need to insert so that the data grid and everything can work properly. So it's going to say, for example, the URL code goes here. As you can see, that's not an option. That's because the URL column is not optional. It's always going to show the URL column. Whereas things like Twitter, Facebook, Google, those are optional. You can tick those boxes and it will show them or not show them, for example. So what you need to do is you need to put the code that you want to go into the database right there into the data. And so I'm going to show you how easy this is to do, alright? But one thing I do want to change is for the main loop, I want to pass it the URL parameter, okay? So I'm just going to make that one change here, which means I have to replace it here. And the URL we're going to pass it is going to be the next list item of the URLs. So what we're doing now is we're looping. This is where all this stuff is happening, and it tells you where to put the code. Once you do it once, you'll understand how it works, basically. Once you watch this video, you should pretty much get it. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to pass it the next list item of URL. So inside of here, we are accepting the URL. So inside of the URL column, all we have to do is paste that URL. So that URL is going to show up in that first column. Inside of the Twitter code, all I'm going to do is call my Twitter function, which, like I said, I've already made. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it the URL. It's going to do the check for me and pass back the number. And then I'm going to come into Facebook. And just right here, we're just going to fill in this function. Very easy. And you can add in commands, whatever you need to add in. All you have to do is you go to the point in code where it says Facebook code goes here. Whatever you filled in, whatever your column names are, that is going to be what it says. So if it's a YouTube views, it would say YouTube views code goes here. And all you're going to do is add your little bits of code right where it tells you. So we come into Google, we just paste that in, and all we have to do now is simply add some URLs to the list, and that's it. So I'm just going to actually bring this up to the top here, input a clear list, URLs, and in this case, instead of like maybe importing a list, I'm just going to write them in by myself. Oops. Let's do one more. The delimiters can be new line. And would you believe me if I told you that that was it? All we had to do is add a couple URLs to a list, or you could obviously import them. We just passed the URL parameter, and then all we did was we called the functions that actually get the data where it says data, and it tells you basically inside of your main command, it just tells you that the URL code goes here, and basically the data that you want to put inside of the data grid, it's just all you have to do is put it right in that data. So all we did was make a few small tweaks, and now if I wanted to get the Twitter social signals for which would, I believe it's the tweets, or yeah, like tweets containing the URL or whatever it is for Twitter, all we would do is hit run, And it's going to show the URLs because the URLs is not optional, of course, and then it's going to show us Twitter. But some people may want more social signals. In this case, I want to get all three. So I'm going to hit run, and it's going to show you all of them. Perhaps you don't want Facebook, or maybe you don't want Twitter, because we got Twitter the first time. So we want Facebook and Google+. We hit run. And as you can see, the options here, when you use the checkbox, it makes it dynamic so that you can give people the option to choose whether or not they want to get that data, which is really handy. And it's actually the main reason why I built this program. Now, if we wanted to export this information, let's say we're satisfied with this, we just hit the export button, and it's automatically going to, and I'm going to save this real quick and show you. Just name it Social Signals Test Video, or, well, video, I guess. It's not really a test video. So pull it up here. Social Signals Video. And there it is. So as you can see, in just a few minutes, really, we were able to create a pretty decent sized bot that has already a dynamic data grid so that we can choose the information we want to get. And of course, you don't have to do this. If you just want to build a standard data grid, you don't have to use this checkbox, which means you don't have to fill these in either, by the way. All you have to do is fill in the column names. If all of these were required, then all you would do would be URLs, Twitter, Facebook, and of course Google+. I'm just going to type Google for time. We can fill in this, URLs, row, social command would be, let's say, get social signals, hit create code, and there we go. And in this case, we don't have any checkboxes or an export, so there's no GUI code, but we can select that as well, of course, and it will add that button into there. So as you can see, you can create bots extremely quickly when you use this program